Hi, I'm Robert Eggers, and I'm the writer and director of Nosferatu. These studio logos are based on silent film studio logos, all of them. If you're watching the international version, you'll see the Universal logo first, which is, in fact, in a silent film era Universal logo. I actually prefer the international version because there's a little more silence before everything kicks off. Orlok is speaking ancient Dacian, which is what the ancient people who lived in Romania spoke. And it's a dead language, but it's been sort of recreated by Florin Lazarescu, who is our Romanian expert that we've turned to for folklore and the language. This is on a soundstage, and we had to make it so the room sort of opened up to get the camera around to get this angle, like the walls were on hinges. And if you notice, there's a dollhouse that looks like this house inside that last scene. I went sort of on the tail end of childhood in this sequence, and that is a location in the Czech Republic, this exterior. And this was a very large garden set that we had built on a soundstage so that the camera could go into the floor and a couple shots later into the earth, so to speak. Marie Gabrielle Rodi is the movement choreographer on the film, and she has expertise in Buto, and she worked with Lily Rose Depp on doing all that physicality for real. Like there's nothing sped up, there's nothing done in post. That's all Lily's performance. And I'm very pleased with the Nosferatu title treatment that was done by Teddy Blanks. He did all the graphics, including those silent film logo animations, but the calligraphy that he did by hand for the Nosferatu title treatment is very nice.
Nothing. I tripped.
Come here. There's nothing to be afraid.
Basically, everything's on stage or a backlot. There's a few things that aren't, and I'll mention them, but yet again, we're on stage. We built this so that we could, it seems very simple, but actually getting the camera around the bed with the canopy on that bed was quite complicated just to, have some very kind of simple staging.
So everything I wear, absolutely covered in it.
But Greta loves it here. She wishes you to stay too.
Day is of the utmost importance for us.
1 minute more.
I really must be off. Goodbye.
In the script of the original Murnau film by Heinrich Galeen, there is a moment where Hutter turns his pockets inside out to show that he doesn't have any money. And that desperation for money is something that is important for Thomas's character. This is a back lot that we built in Barrandov Studios in Prague. We shot everything in the Czech Republic. This town of Visburg is based on a lot of German port cities, Wismar and Lubeck, as well as Gdansk, which is now in Poland. We were sort of using these cities as inspiration for this set, and we also scanned some of the buildings in these cities and another to do our set extensions. We digitally scanned them.
You have kept him a quarter hour.
Forgive me, sir.
There's a little boy up there working as a clerk on the ladder that no one sees, but he was very important for me to be in this scene. I'm sure he has a terrible life.
Pray pardon me, Herr Knock, for my tardiness.
Your delay is providential, my boy. Providential. Come in, come in. Still preparing the accounts.
And I thank you, sir, for considering me.
When tidings of your recent nuptials reached my ears, I knew...
It's tricky to find the tone of naturalism with Knock here, played by the illustrious Simon McBurney, where he is fairly normal, but just weird enough that we think something's up, and then gets weirder and more unhinged throughout the scene without it being too comical. But I think Simon hit it just right, but it was definitely tricky.
Might be fully engaged with the firm.
Indeed, indeed. Providence.
We've kind of always had atmosphere, sort of haze running on our interiors. I believe always. And I think we got the right amount of haze in this scene. There's a couple scenes where we went a little too heavy and it sort of obscures some of the detail, but I think it was important to have the period atmosphere. Tracy Loader, the makeup artist, added that bit of psoriasis on Knock's skull, which is quite nice.
An old home, and he will pay most generously.
I shall meet him tomorrow then. 9 of the clock?
Here is the peculiarity. He's too infirm to travel, so you needs must journey to him.
I see.
He lives in a small country east...
This is actually the Danish spelling of Transylvania. The German spelling doesn't look anything like Transylvania. We did that so that it would be clear that it's Transylvania. I hope you also see the occult materials that he's covering up with his document quickly and suspiciously. Sigils and ciphers and cryptograms and whatnot.
In the flesh. And he will reward you handsomely, my boy, handsomely. Secure this account and you will secure your official position in the firm.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I shan't disappoint. And what was the Count's name?
Orlok.
So yeah, hear the maniacal laughter after you say Orlok's name is off camera, making it a little bit more subtle. We've actually already seen this street at a different angle, but we found ways to... I mean, the backlot set was quite large, but we had to sometimes redress the same street and shoot it from a slightly different angle to make the city look a little larger. I think it works quite well there.
Why have you killed these beautiful flowers?
What? What are you talking about?
Forgive me.
Let us put them in water.
They will only die.
It was difficult to get the tone of the Hutter's house and their sort of aspirational decor where they're trying to look wealthier than they are, but also make sure that it looks humble and like a slightly crummy rental property that they're putting effort into making look nicer. I think that you don't totally understand that until we go to Harding's house in the next scene and see the contrast.
The chapel walls. Above was an impenetrable thundercloud outstretched beyond the hills. The scent of the lilacs was strong in the rain, and when I reached the altar, You weren't there. Standing before me, all in black, was... I was so happy. So very happy. We exchanged vows. We embraced. And...
Lily does this monologue very well. Nick's reaction at the end of it is also quite strong.
Everyone. The stench of their bodies was horrible. And I've never been so happy as that moment. As I held hands with death.
Never speak these things aloud. No.
It was very enjoyable working on the score with Rob and Carolyn and being able to embrace the romanticism of the music as well as doing the super intense horror stuff. And I think the music does so much to help us get into Ellen's psychology beyond the incredible performance by Lily Rose. You can hear the cat purring. I don't know how clearly you see the cat on her lap, but she's there. The cat's name is Greta, which is a nod to Greta Schroeder, who played Ellen in the Murnau film.
From my grandfather, the best.
I oughtn't.
It's worth celebrating your adventure.
Thank you.
I envy you.
We did many takes of this, and Nick and Aaron got quite insanely high from smoking so many cigars, and the laughter in the beginning of the scene got quite outrageous by some of the later takes. I also like how Nick makes it so that Hutter doesn't really like smoking the cigar, and he's just doing it to be cool, and that he does it very awkwardly. But, actually, Nick and Aaron are friends. They're both started out as child actors and have known each other forever, but they've never been in anything before. So they actually have this relationship, which you can really see them enjoying each other and believe their past. The idea I had was that Hutter had a working class background, but his father was some kind of tradesman who made enough money to send his son to a nicer school. And so then he was sort of rubbing elbows with Harding, and that begins his aspirations for better things.
And toss aside your fine opportunity.
I fear her past melancholy returning.
Naturally, her dashing young husband's leaving her bedside cold.
My sweet ones, it's time now for bed.
Listen, your mother.
The time has simply come. Enough now. Come on.
All right.
There was a monster in the room.
These actors who play the children are Czech, and they've been dubbed by equally excellent English actors.
Good night.
Up we go.
It's hard for me to believe that I have something so fluffy and colorful in any of my movies, but I do like it quite a bit.
Forgive me.
Jaren, my DP, was alarmed by the amount of colors and patterns that sort of clashed with each other that were in the Harding house, and that is very much the style of the day. In fact, we toned it down quite a bit. I love this little detail that Suzanne, the hair designer, has this little bow in the back of Lily's head, knowing that we were going to zoom into her bun here. These two shots were originally one long shot that sort of went 180 degrees around the room, but we cut it in half for pacing. I think it works well. You can see the lacing on Lily's corset in the last shot, and these like undergarments that puff her sleeves out. Great details by Linda Muir. You can barely see the skull and crossbones in the very top of that cabinet, that altar. But again, maybe a little too much haze in this scene. You also see, we should have staged it differently with the placement of the book, but behind him is the gigantic book of the Solomonari that Willem Dafoe's character finds later in the film. There it is, out of focus. It was very difficult for Simon, for anybody to get out like all this detailed text while sort of screaming with all the wind and music. It was quite difficult. This canal is based almost exactly on a canal in the town of Stade in Germany that we also scouted. Craig Lathrop, production designer, built this nice area of Visburg where the Hardings live that we probably didn't shoot enough to compensate for the cost. I think that's one of the weird things about this story is that you go from one location to another. And so in building all this stuff, we often would build, an enormous set that only plays kind of in one scene.
That well.
Those are real cobblestones. Really love this piece of music, and the sketch of this was the first thing that Robin wrote. I think Robin maybe wrote like some scary music and then some sketch of music that he called Ellen's theme that became this. The past landscape was in the Czech Republic. Angela Barson was the VFX supervisor, and she and her team created Visburg and the windmills. The big snowy landscape was actually Transylvania. We had a small unit shooting in Transylvania, and now we're back in the Czech Republic, but the distant mountains are Transylvanian mountains. And then we're about to go to a Transylvanian village that we built in the Czech Republic, but we also scanned a lot of buildings from a vernacular architecture museum in Transylvania to do that wide shot that you saw when he was like overlooking the valley and he sees the village in the distance.
Thank you.
This scene with the Roma camp was one of the most difficult to put together. It was difficult to stage on the day. It took many rehearsals, but also finding the Roma performers from the Czech Republic, from Slovakia. These musicians came from Romania, as did a few other people. That clapping woman, Maria, she came from Romania for the shoot. And so, yeah, it was very challenging to find everyone. These young guys, this guy, Rado, they do sort of contemporary Roma music that's mixed with hip hop. She was actually 5 months pregnant, but they do like Roma dancing mixed with hip hop dancing, and that's how we were able to find many of these performers. And Jordan High is a Czech pop star, this guy who is the sort of vampire hunter. We find it later. Claudiu Trandafir also came from Romania. He's a fantastic actor. Grew this wonderful mustache. That's also his own hair. It kind of looks like a wig, but that is his. The castle, I'll talk more about the castle exterior, but basically we decided that this is in Hunedoara, Transylvania. And so Claudiu and the ethnic Romanians that are inside the inn are dressed as if they are from Hunedoara. That guy with the mustache and the pipe is Pavel, our stunt coordinator. He had a great face, and I knew he needed to be something in the film. This, of course, is the best acting take and the best take for camera, but it, once again, has a little too much atmosphere. So this role in the script was the innkeeper's wife, but we've changed it to the innkeeper's mother-in-law. And this woman is a non-actor who we found on TikTok, and her niece videos her like making traditional Romanian food. And we went by Bunica, which means granny. And that's how we referred to her. And she was absolutely lovely. And this was outside of her wheelhouse. And she's also from southern Romania, and she was doing a Transylvanian accent for the movie, which Florin says was dead on. I like the tiny little braids that are also part of the Hunedoara look.
Ferește-te de umbra lui. Umbra te învălește într-un vis rău. Nu există scăpare. Roagă-te, roagă-te, roagă-te. Doamne, apără și păzește. Doamne, apără și păzește.
And this slightly strange shaped cross is, I think, a cool detail, but obviously something from Transylvanian folk crafts I'm sure you're not surprised to hear. It was challenging to shoot all the stuff at this location. The interior of the inn was built on location, and it was in this wooded area, and it was difficult to get everything in this one night. Katerina Bila is the virgin on horseback who was really up for anything and very cool with it being so cold out, and was just super professional and gives a really great ethereal performance. The idea here is that the virgin on the white horse will lead them to the grave of the vampire, because it won't cross the grave. You're trying to sort out the Romanian folklore, and how that works with the Nosferatu mythology was a bit of a challenge at times. Something that Lauren reminded me was in the folklore all the time was that people say that very often that vampires have red faces. In the firelight, you can't really see it, but on that corpse that they dig out, there are blotches of blood that are sort of under his skin to give some redness to the face, which also we give to Orlok after he feeds, but once again, you don't always see it with the firelight. This is Transylvania. The shot before, Czech Republic. And this, there's a little Romanian mountain in the background there, but these sandstone pillars are actually the very famous Czech location. It's been in many Czech movies. Jan Schwankmayer's Faust, for example. We actually really didn't want to shoot here because it's so iconically Czech, even though we built this nice little Romanian shrine. But the mountains that looked more Transylvanian were by the Polish border and inaccessible with all the snow by the time we were shooting, and we could get to this. And it is cool. I mean, it does look cool, I gotta say. It does look cool. The crossroads that was like a very clearly defined crossroads was weirdly challenging to find with impressive pine trees. Obviously, if you think about it, the crossroads should have just as much snow as the side of the road. But if we had done that, then you wouldn't be able to see the crossroads. So we sort of left the road that the carriage is on with a little less snow dressing. The snow, by the way, are potato flakes. So it's like what you would make freeze-dried mashed potatoes from. It's an old school snow, but I think it looks quite nice. And unlike in other film versions of Dracula or the book or other film versions of Nosferatu, there is no driver in the carriage. In the book, it's Dracula in disguise, but we thought it would be even more mysterious and magical if there is no driver. And the carriage was actually one of the coolest props. It's night and it's backlit, and so you don't get to see it, but there's like incredible carvings of medieval Transylvanian prince a la Vlad the Impaler, like leading an army. This was actually a very easy shot with Nick sort of standing on a dolly. So this is Hunedora Castle in Transylvania that I think was Stoker's inspiration for Castle Dracula, because it would have been in a book that he would have had access to in the British Library by Emily Gerard that it's clear he read. This sort of dizzying series of tilts was very much Jaron Blaschke, the DP's idea, but I think it's very good for the disorienting feeling. This moment of like sort of waking in the carriage and then suddenly he's outside the carriage was in the script, and it took a lot of crazy jiggery pokery with fake legs of Nick that would be pulled out of frame and the sides of the carriage be pulled out of frame so that he would be standing there. We're at a location, but we built these gates because the castle gates were not quite impressive enough. But then the gate behind that is on location, and this is Pernstein Castle in Moravia in the Czech Republic, which Herzog actually used the same castle, and I really didn't want to shoot here because Herzog shot there. But we discovered that the bits of the castle I wanted to use, Herzog didn't shoot. So we actually have images that are only in this movie, which is cool. This shot of the gates closing was actually not a storyboarded shot, and Chris Columbus, the main creative producer on the film, ran up to me and said, you should just grab that. And I'm glad that he did.
Late.
You just see that Orlok has strange high-heeled shoes that have iron heels, which is something that these Transylvanian noblemen in his period wore. And so you'll hear in his footstep, there is these slight like clinks because they had iron heels, sort of like tall horseshoes. Okay, now, of course, we're back on a set. And this set was really incredible. And, it didn't take movie lighting to make it look real. I mean, it looked really like you were in a castle. The tiles on the floor were all hand-fired and painted. It was quite an elaborate set. There's also a beautiful feast on the table that you don't really see enough of, with a cockatrice and some other weird things.
Would you not wish to wait till morning?
I wish you to do as I request.
This set was based on the biggest hall in Hunedora Castle. A little different, but I think part of what makes it not look like a set is that it is based on the real architecture, which is, in some ways a little strange and in some ways a little banal. And I think that makes it more convincing.
Forgive me.
Pray. Sit.
Thank you.
Bill worked with an opera coach to lower his voice an octave for this role, and he listened to a lot of Transylvanian accent stuff, but then was allowed to kind of do his own thing as well because he's from hundreds of years earlier, so who knows how things might have changed.
I have long awaited them.
Of course, why not?
Dream.
Big fan of that goblet and the sound of his fingernail.
I have, my lord, I have questions about the unfamiliar customs of the peasantry and the errant wanderers. Last night I saw, or rather I believe I saw a band of gypsies. They ventured to a small birch grove and...
Yesternight was but the eve of their swung to land rain.
I like this speech a lot, and it's similar to the sort of Children of the Night, what sweet music they make. But we found that potentially this scene was too long, especially for a scene where you don't see the antagonist practically at all because it's so dark, because we wanted a slow reveal of Orlok, but because he had so much dialogue, it felt too much. But I really do love Bill's performance of this text, so I'm glad to include it in the extended version along with this awesome laugh.
I fear we have deep blows.
There is much conversation about how large this hat could and should be between Lindemir and I, and I think we argued about it for weeks. And this is actually on the smaller side for this kind of hat for a Transylvanian nobleman, but it is already quite massive, and I felt if it got any bigger than this, it would be verging on comical, even though it absolutely could have been 12 centimeters taller for sure.
How I look forward to retiring to your city of a modern mind.
Damien Volpe, the sound designer, had this idea that Orlok's breath and Orlok's emotions were tied to the castle, which is cool. I think it's very effective and unique.
Eat.
This was our first week of shooting, and Nick was very nervous about having the right acting style for the movie and the right kind of hysterical fear, but he was so anxious about being afraid that I think it really added a lot to his performance because he was afraid.
It is your warmth. Come by the fire. Your face shows you what and when.
A little nod to Jean Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast here, but with hopefully a more realistic looking statue. These statues are actually based on Romanian tombs of knights. And Damien, the sound designer, doing a little nod to the lighthouse here.
Careful, children.
In the Book of Dracula, there's a lot of stuff that takes place on a graveyard that overlooks the sea, which if you've been to Whitby, it makes a lot of sense. It really didn't make a lot of sense to put it on the ocean because of how these northern port cities are. It would be a terribly long way to get there. And so it made actually more sense for it to take place in an estuary. And you see the sea in the distance beyond them, there you see those ships that are out of focus beyond them. So this was shot in a lake in the Czech Republic that we were able to kind of make seem like an estuary. And Craig and the Greens team brought the sand dunes to this location. They were not there. And there was actually a tremendous amount of flooding, and we lost most of the shoreline that we were planning to shoot on. And had, by the time we came there to shoot, and had Craig's team not brought all those sand dunes, we wouldn't have been able to get the scene.
Destiny! My sweet romantic. I'm not mad, Hannah.
Lenny.
Forgive me. Everything I say sounds so childish.
Your words spring from your honest heart.
My heart is lost without my Thomas.
Here you see on the hood of the fireplace some sort of black three-dimensional form, which is actually Orlok's coat of arms, which was also over the gates of the castle in an earlier scene and on his coffin. And here, it's cool, you see the place is even more dilapidated than you thought in the light of day. Love that door. We also had a limited number of corridors that we could build just for financial reasons. So it was difficult to, like a real castle, have some different shapes that has some wooden joists and a Romanesque arch instead of just Gothic arches everywhere, and trying to find a way to recycle these different sets without making it feel like we're recycling the corridors was challenging, while still trying to give them some kind of identity. Oda Barash and his son Joachim took care of the animals for us, and are just, I mean, it's the best experience I've ever had with animal trainers. The wolves were well trained, the rats were well trained, they moved when they were supposed to. We did drop the mirror in a separate pass so that the rats would not be harmed, but they did their job. I like Orlok's signature.
And your signature.
This contract is written in Vinca's syllables. They're Neolithic symbols that were found in the Baltic region, and we thought they would be cool for Orlok's secret magical language.
A maiden's token, I see. Your bride.
Just so, yes.
In beginning in the More Now film is Hutter or Harker character has a photograph of Mina, of Ellen, of Mina, whatever. And this gets carried into all the Dracula films, starting with Nosferatu. I thought that having it be her hair that he smells would be more effective and also different. He also has more control over her by having a bit of her physically in his hand. Again, just noting that we have this slow reveal of Orlok. We're seeing him a little more here than we have in the last scene.
Your signature. I pray you will indulge my pardon.
This trope is from Shacklin the painter, of actually offering money. He thinks it's for Grunewald Manor, which it is, but it's also for Ellen. And he just feels that something's wrong. And this little scrolled area where to sign was on some like Transylvanian contracts and deeds and things that we found. I also love the Cyrillic calligraphy on the edges. Trying to get the calligrapher to be just a bit nervous there. This next little remark will kind of spoil things, but Nick is quite tall. I mean, Bill is 6'4", and with the head and the shoes and the whole thing, he was probably 6'7", but he was also hunched. And so we were trying to get Nick to stand as far back in frame and not look too tall and just seem nervous. Also, this set was not meant to be shot at this angle, and we didn't have enough time to scout this particular set because Craig had to turn the Great Hall into the library on a fairly quick turnaround. And when we got there, we couldn't get the camera around the table to get this last shot from the angle that we wanted. And so behind that chandelier, those bookcases are actually CG. They look great, but there was nothing there but a green screen. So as much as I like doing things practically, CG can help you out if there's a problem. And Angela and Blue Bolt have such good taste that it looks photorealistic.
My lord. Count? You have my locket.
In the Transylvanian folklore, vampires often drink your heart blood and you feel a pain on your chest. I think this is kind of like old hag syndrome, but that's why he bites their chests rather than their throats. Of course, the throats makes more scientific sense, but this is closer to the folklore. I mean, it is folklore. Although sometimes vampires don't even drink blood, they just suffocate you or even rape you. So here, this is Pernstein Castle again, but Craig had to build some extra walls to cover some 18th century architecture that didn't have the right feeling. And also this door was really there and just led to like yet another courtyard. But Craig put in a nice looking medieval door here and a staircase for Nick to begin to go down. But then when we get into the crypt, it is back on stage at Barrandov. Brilliant slip by Nicholas Hoult. He's very good at flipping and slipping naturalistically. See how many you can count in the movie. Some of the detail on these coffins was outrageously beautiful, but we would never get close enough to see. And Orlok's coffin, which is super cool, is based on actually some Polish coffins, but there was a lot of similarities in material culture in Transylvanian, Polish, Hungarian, Croatian nobility in the period. Literally having skulls on it is part of these Polish coffins. Orlok has, of course, the Dacian wolves and his coat of arms and some other stuff, and then these various magical symbols. You'll see the heptagram that is repeated in different forms, first on Nock's desk, then in the demonic circle that he makes, and it continues to be a repeating motif, but we have slightly different versions of it, like in slightly different places. and you can just see the rays. Well, hold on, not yet. Bill was in there with maggots and rats on him with contact lenses that made him blind. So good for Bill. I would not want to do that. Okay, you can just see the rays of sun disappearing as the sun is setting, which makes it all very bad timing for Nicholas Holt's character. I really think that this scene is the best scene for Bill's makeup, the reveal of him actually being just a dead corpse. Unlike Bram Stoker's Dracula, he's just a static dead corpse, as in he doesn't turn young, he doesn't turn anything, he's just a corpse, which is more to the folklore and I think much scarier. The heptagram is also on the ring. I like that Lily has slightly Orlocky hand position in her somnambulism, in her sleepwalking. There's a slightly longer version of this sequence in the deleted scenes, so you can check that out if you want. This controlling with the shadow, exactly what that choreography was sort of done in the camera tests to kind of understand how well we could do the shadows, because there were people were worried we were going to have to do the shadows with CG, so we did a lot of camera tests with the shadows to be sure that we could do them practically. This is that same replica of the canal in Stade. It was freezing cold. We shot a much longer version of it, and the soles of Lily's bare feet were freezing. Here, Bill's riding on the dolly to get this shot. And this was done all in camera with a harness that they were both lying on that raised up and then turned counterclockwise. I like that you can see the back of Orlok's skull there. We also did this shot in the camera test to be sure that it would be as creepy as possible.
In mild cases of somnambulism, sleepwalking, it is brought on by congestion of the blood. Too much blood. Perhaps...
It's always nice to work with Ralph Fiennes. We just really get along. He gets what I'm up to. I was often apologizing to him for not giving him any direction because he was doing it exactly as I wanted it to be done.
Keep it from your worries, my dear fellow.
Yes, of course.
I'm disposed to recommend...
And this little laugh that Aaron does when Severs makes a distasteful joke. We were practicing, the two of us, in his makeup tent beforehand, and definitely got into a giggle spell of what that, trying to figure out what it would be.
He's coming.
I'll increase the...
Severs quieting her with ether always seems to get a lot of laughter by the audience, which I don't mind, but it was certainly not intended. This was challenging shot to have Nick open the window and jump out on the ledge here. And in fact, the window had to be open in order to get the shot, so he's actually miming opening the window. I think you can clock that if you carefully watch. And I think that the tilt down to the water is maybe one of the only things in the movie that I would think is pretty, like, I don't know, maybe we didn't execute that the best, but you have to have a few things that you don't like to do better the next time.
I never liked that man. Never. I shall call upon his office myself directly.
Please, Rauhud,
I
no.
must discover something.
Oh, for heaven's sake,
Thomas...
you cannot leave unaccompanied.
Love Aaron and Emma's costumes in this scene. Lily's also sitting in a wheelchair, and we couldn't find a way to cover the scene to get what we needed out of them facially to also get the wheelchair in one shot. Any normal person with half a brain would just shoot a wide shot, and you could see the fact that she was in a wheelchair. But we just wanted to be with Lily and her experience, and so keep it in one. Also here, again, if you kind of look, there's very little land that they're standing on because of this flood that I described in the earlier scene. And the crew for this scene, we were all out in the water in waders.
Just a moment longer. Please.
Friedrich, be not a churl, please.
You mustn't be swept up in her fairy ways. The entirety of the household centers upon her whims. I tire of discussing her.
Think you there is no burden upon myself? I love her. She is blameless for her malady.
Very lucky to have Emma and Aaron, such phenomenal actors, playing these support roles. They have arcs that are more conventional, but also more human than some of the other characters in the film.
Like his father.
Mm-hmm.
Friedrich in public.
Can't resist you, my...
Ellen!
Again, some great performance by Lily and great choreography by Marie Gabrielle. And another scene with a little too much haze. Luckily, Ralph has such a identifiable voice that we know who it is right away.
Hospital, not a prison. A little old soul he may look.
This gentleman, Christian Dunkley Clark, is actually a street busker on the Charles Bridge. He's an expat. He's obviously from East London, but he's a tremendously powerful, committed actor who can go to 110%. And he actually plays another role in the film quietly, secretly, because only he could do it. That set and this was actually in a hospital in Prague. We built the door and that gate, and we obviously decorated Seaver's room, but this was part of Invalidovna, which was an old military hospital that's been shot in many films, including Amadeus and From Hell. And now we're back in Barrandov.
Good day, Miner. I'm Dr. Zevers. What seems to be the trouble?
No trouble. No trouble. Providence. Providence.
Let's see. Can you tell me your name?
I have no...
A bit of poor thinking, but Knox made very busy work of those walls for only having just been admitted to the hospital.
Lives. Gifts. Bestowed.
This pigeon gag is another great example of where the marriage of practical effects and CG is so good. So we have a real pigeon. Simon is petting the real pigeon. He was really biting the pigeon's head. As he's petting, we canned him a prosthetic pigeon with a head that was made out of kind of like hard candy that would split apart. And right before he bit it, the VFX team had the real pigeon's eye to replace the candy pigeon head. And then also after post-biting, they make the body sort of throb as the blood gushes. But the blood gushes were all done practically. I think it's a very successful marriage of all these teams working together. And of course, Simon's performance. And it's also cool the way the very thin handy split apart, the way that it fractured, like looks kind of like translucent feathers on his face. It's pretty cool.
Who is?
Was he that invoked me 'Twas I that was chosen to serve him, for I know what he covered.
I think Simon does a great job of being totally in a character that sometimes is playing for comic relief.
Perceive confusion, afflictions, rebukes, for you have forsaken me, and he shall reign over all of your empty houses. Devour. Devour.
God help me.
This style of corset is made so that the woman who doesn't have a servant could tighten it from the front herself. It can also be used in this context.
These hysterical spells come over her at nightfall, like clockwork.
It would be more normal for Friedrich to have a tiled stove, but there is a lot of people in northern Germany who are into British culture, and so having a fireplace like this would have been a sign of status and good taste, but not particularly common. Something you don't see, which we actually have in like all the scenes in this house, is that wealthy people had little cushions in front of their chairs to put their feet on. You can just see them occasionally. I don't think you can see them in this scene, but it is a pretty weird affectation and trend in the period.
Frau Hutter. He is coming.
What? Who the devil are you, Thomas?
Teresa Dushkova, who plays the nun, is a Czech actor. She gave a great audition. We gave her a tiny prosthetic of a hair lip that had been repaired with surgery. This monastery set is one of my favorite sets that was built, and Lauren was very impressed with it. It just had a magical presence. There's just so much detail in all of the medieval illuminations. It's based on these kinds of monasteries that are in northern Romania and in Bukovina. I don't know that you could travel on a river from Hunedoara to Bukovina, but hey.
I'm an physician and scholar in Zurich when I was at school. My finest teacher.
Send a message to Zurich, then.
No, he's here, in Visma.
Here.
The Van Helsing character is called Bulwer in the Galeen screenplay and does not play a very large part, but I love the Van Helsing character and wanted to do more with it. I named them von Franz because a lot of the names, Sievers, Seward, Harker, Hutter, they're kind of analogs. And then Marie-Louise von Franz is a prominent Jungian who I admire. And she's an expert on alchemy, in fact.
With the work of Paracelsus, Agrippa, and the like.
I'm a shipman, Sievers.
Alchemy. Mystic philosophy. The occult.
Doamne Dumnezeule, fă ca acest blestem care se face în numele Tău înfricoșător să fie spre îngrozirea acestui povățuitor al vicleniei. Ieși și se depărtează de la robului. Amin!
As did Liana Navrat, who is the Schema nun. It's a very high order of nun. You can see her Anilov, which is that sort of tabard thing she's wearing with the skull and crossbones. It's very common in Russia, and they have them in Romania, but to find a Romanian example from the period was incredibly challenging. We did find one, but uncoding what all the little bits and pieces and everything meant and what the text was about was challenging and something that we worked closely with Lauren, who was also consulting with Orthodox priests. I did not notice that Teresa, the novice here, is holding her cross with her left hand, which would be a sacrilegious thing to do. Oops.
He is bound for Visper.
He cannot leave here. He must return to the cursed earth wherein he was buried.
No, he seeks after Ellen. I know it.
I believe Craig scanned a period schooner for that shot. In hindsight, this looks a little bit like a giant box of Romanian wine, but oh well. I think that's maybe the only crossfade in any of my movies thus far. I'm really like hard cuts. You can hear that theme. It goes nose for to, which is very much deliberate.
The scientific community is on a crusade to prove his work drove him to madness. I assure you, Harding, the professor may be a bit unconventional, but he will know the source.
This is a really cool set that, like, it was sort of based on kind of David Lean, Charles Dickens sets that has these multi-layers to create this slum neighborhood.
It is your former student.
You can hear shouting. That is Michael Fenton, one of the sound designers, and his wife, which I think adds a lot to the scene. But in any case, back to the Nosferatu theme song. There's a way in which this is based a lot on Hammer horror films, and that was something that Bernard Herrmann, the Hammer composer, did. Was all the themes were kind of based on the title of the film. So that's something that Robin did. Really quickly, when we pan over to von Franz in the chair, you can just see a giant alchemical set of glassware, but it's only on camera briefly, which this set was so detailed. The dressing was so elaborate that we couldn't sort of undo everything to kind of redress it to kind of get the shots that we wanted. And unfortunately, the takes where we kind of see more of the set and where there is a little less atmosphere just happened to not be the best acting takes.
Neque mitatis margaritas vestia antiporcos.
My dear young Sievers.
Oh, do my dying eyes deceive me? I should have known. Embrace me, my boy. I am so rejoiced to see you.
This dust gag is based on a scene from Paul in the Saddle, a John Wayne Western, where Gabby Hayes sees another crazy old prospector type guy he hasn't seen in many years, and they hug each other, and the dust goes all over the place. And I saw it as a kid, and for some reason it's really stuck with me, and I needed to do something with it.
I see, yes. A dear friend of yours has some rare ailment. Perhaps a house guest, yes? A young woman exhibiting protracted fits.
This set was, I just loved sitting in here and just looking at every little thing on the walls. It was just my favorite place to be.
Schnapps?
So the landscape is the Czech Republic, and the horse and this sort of archway that we see was built in the Czech Republic. But that monastery exterior is actually completely CG, based on photographs and scanning of monasteries in northern Romania, because we weren't allowed to shoot there because of the war in Ukraine. It is completely photorealistic and pretty incredible.
Капитан, назад на шканцы. Васильев там, а еще Радимир Руденко.
So, due to budgetary restrictions, we were not able to put this ship set on a gimbal. So we had to kind of just move the camera a little bit to make it look like it's rocking, which we watched a lot of old movies to see when it worked, when it didn't work, how to get it to work, etc. And it was challenging. I think it's all right. Sometimes it's more convincing than others, but I think if you don't know, you wouldn't necessarily notice it. And Karel, who plays the ship's captain, is a renowned Czech actor who's in basically every Czech movie ever made.
But once.
It's all I could do to keep her from tearing the room to ribbons.
Untie her.
You are the doctor Arceva spoke of.
Drugged?
I've been administering an opiate. She must rest by day, for her body is in utter stress all
She
night.
cannot be clouded. Step away, step away.
In this scene, you see the fantastic cat training by the Baresh family. Greta leaves the bed exactly on cue when she should.
She has no master nor mistress.
Quite so. I entreat you to excuse me, but I should like to...
I love von Franz and Ellen's relationship and how it grows beginning in this scene.
Curiosity about you. Deceivers tells me that you've had these spells since childhood. Would you describe them?
I cannot always remember them, as if my spirit wanders off.
It was a challenge also with Willem to get his costume dirty enough to fit the character, but not so vile that the Hardings would just kick him out of their home.
Always knew the contents of my Christmas gifts. I knew when that my mother would pass. Father, he would.
These kinds of speeches are the worst acting challenge, and Lily did a marvelous job. I also was asking her to do it a lot faster than felt comfortable to her. It is like very large beat changes that jump from like one idea to another quite quickly and sometimes randomly, and so to do that at the pace she's doing is particularly challenging.
The epilepsy's back.
Pray, continue.
At last, Papa found me once laying. Unclothed I was. My body, my...
And yet again, Robin's music's adding the extra bit of depth.
Sin, he said! He would have sent me to that place. I shan't go!
No.
It all ended when I first met my Thomas. From our love I became as normal.
Yet these visions and night wanderings have returned to you.
It's a very flattering angle of Willem.
Yes. My dreams grow darker. The people come from within us. Beyond.
A trance state is begun. You have led her to decrease the congestion.
Of course.
Her menstruations are also
liberal.
Too much blood. Too much blood. A taper, please.
He has a ring very similar to Jung's Abraxas ring on his forefinger, and his quizzing glass is a kind of fashion trend that was cool many years prior to 1838, where the story takes place. And this demonstration was an actual thing that was done to show hysterical women that were in a particular state. Kind of shocking to see, but it is based on something real.
For she feels nothing. She communes now with another realm. Tend to the walls, Sivas. Do you hear me, my child?
And yet again, all the crazy stuff that Lily does in this scene is her. There's no CG manipulation. There's no speeding up of the camera or anything. And in fact, she could even do a back bend more extreme, but it seemed so athletic that it seemed out of Charcot's poses, hysterical poses, or even something that would seem like demon possession. It was just too much.
I command you, hearken to my voice.
And it's also her vocal performance, very carefully edited with all the very best bits chosen. but coming from her, including this sort of demony voice she makes when she strangles herself.
To me.
I shall persist to join you every night, first in sleep, then in your arms. Everything will be least to the abomination, and you'll be knee-deep in blood.
I think we had to record this several times to be understood, but also to have the vocal quality we were looking for, like recording it in post-production.
As I feared.
Well?
Well, what, my boy? Cannot you see?
Well, see what?
All of Emma's costumes are quite exquisite.
Yes, cursed. This dear young creature is possessed of some spirit. Perhaps a demon.
I beg your pardon?
I assure you, Harding, the professor means this is hyperbole.
No, I mean a demon.
This extended edition version just gives a little more context to von Franz's occult beliefs and the beliefs of the period and clarifies things a bit. But he does say similar things throughout the movie, and you kind of get the idea. So we felt we didn't need all of it. But, you know, if you're at home and you're a dork who wants to enjoy all this stuff like I would, you know, now you got a little more knowledge.
Which reminds me, Sivers, you must introduce me to your madman tomorrow.
Yes, of course, but
Somnambulists afflicted with these perversions often possess a gift, a second sight into the borderland.
I do not wish to dispute you, Professor, but I myself have witnessed women of nervous constitutions invent all manner of delusions.
This is no delusion. I believe she has always been highly conductive to these cosmic forces, uniquely so. You're lunatic, perhaps.
Do you then acknowledge a connection between these cases?
That is a question.
Oh, this is just capital.
I tell you, it is the manner of her husband's disappearance.
No, this evil, what it is, how it has been summoned, unleashed, I know not. But this remarkable child, it has changed it.
Sometimes he's a little Sherlock Holmesy with Ralph as his Watson, which I enjoy. I mean, I do like these kind of chamber scenes that are, you know, a bit Sherlock Holmesy, a bit like these Hammer horror films. I said jokingly but serious many times that this is Merchant Ivory does Hammer horror, and I think this scene certainly captures that. This set was incredibly tiny to just get this shot. Obviously, it's like a quite epical scene in the movie, but this was these two actors with a dummy on a slab of wood with a million water cannons and rain machines and fans and the camera on a crane bobbing around. But here we did build this part of the deck of the ship and this hatch that actually went into the actual hold that we did build. But we felt we needed that to just add a little bit of extra suspense because, again, the whole of the ship is actually like an appropriate size for this kind of schooner, but we would have wanted it to be a little longer because if you've ever seen a James Wan movie, he makes unnaturally long corridors in middle-class family homes in order to get the suspense you need for a jump scare. Can just see Orlok there. It's a little bit of a kind of alien type move, but I think it's all right. And one bit of bad storytelling here when he opens this, Orlok's coffin is inside the crate, but you can't really make it out because the rats are covering most of it. But this moment with Bill is quite nice and the blood squirting all over the place. So I think that almost makes up for the fact that you can't clock that the coffin's in there. This kind of chair actually is from the period. Something that I don't know if you noticed that there's also a bucket on the bottom of it, and he's not wearing any pants so he can just defecate into the bucket while he sits strapped into the chair.
That is the life. He's here! He's here! He's not dead! He's here! He's the life!
The Galeen screenplay has the ship crashing into the harbor much more dramatic like this. Of course, the ship sails into the harbor in a very calm way in the Murnau film, which is iconic in its ghostly stillness, but it was cool to have the opportunity to have something more intense. I was worried Nick was going to get hypothermia. He was really, this is very cold, and he was uncontrollably shivering after doing all that stuff. Many, many takes in the freezing cold rain. And movie rain is just unrelentless, but he was all right. In the end,
That's your look.
Thomas.
Everybody was just super dedicated and threw themselves into this. It was cool to have this main cast of young people that were more or less the same age and all trying to give their best, with Ralph and Willem, who I'd worked with before, as sort of mentors. It was a lovely experience, and it felt a bit like a theatrical troupe.
Like,
these rats were trained to come out of the shipwreck on cue. This was actually transformed, that canal, by the Harding house to become that area of the harbor where the shipwreck would be. But we do have distant rats are CG, but all of the foreground rats are real, tends to be our approach with the rats. The last two shots were also a lot of CG matte painting with some real stuff, but mostly CG work. But we had the time to research what we needed for the architecture, to scan the buildings that we wanted to put in so that everything can be as photoreal as possible without getting into the world of stylized set design that can show the artifice too much or just be so over the top that there's no way we could have actually shot it. I do think that sometimes the night skies are so romantic that they kind of are a give, but the architecture, I think, sits in very, very convincingly.
Willingly repledge her vow. She cannot be stolen.
Yet, my lord.
Stop. Your entreaty is grow insolent. You shall crave of me nothing.
My lord.
Daybreak draws near.
This was not a set, just because we needed the courtyard of Grunewald Manor to be a location, and just in order to have enough to shoot when we went all the way to that castle, we shot this. But it was challenging because it was like very high up in this castle, and so it was kind of a nightmare for Jiren to get all the lights up there in the winter. I love that profile shot of Bill. So yeah, so all the foreground rats are real. A couple of the blurry, super foreground ones, so the midground and the foreground are real, but so the very blurriest foreground are CG, and then the deep background ones are CG. But again, we also got to scan the rats that we were actually using to ensure that it would look good.
I fear no better than everyone tells me I have suffered. Pray, forgive me for all the troubles I have caused you.
I am only glad you've become...
So those kinds of stoves are all throughout the house and in all the different buildings of different sizes. Sometimes we see them, sometimes we don't. There's actually quite a beautiful one in the Harding's front drawing room that we don't get to feature. But this is one of my favorite stoves and gets in there quite a bit.
Something
Awful. If only I could speak to the professor. Hush. His thoughts are so queer. Professor Fran said a demon. Lenny, please. For the sake of the children. Christmastide is upon us.
I love that hairstyle that we gave Emma.
Contrary. Because I am in the right.
Jeebus, I request.
This is in Veladovna again, which we dressed as a morgue. Craig brought in tiles for the floor and some other stuff.
Of a blood plague, such as ophthalmic discharge, even flagrant rodent bites here.
Willem's getting awfully close to a plague victim, if you ask me, but somehow I didn't notice that on the day. You notice his finger is very discolored from his pipe smoking.
Look at this curious mark.
I think this was Willem's first scene.
I've seen some Leviathan-like pests in our canals. Tell me, Professor, what rat is yours of that size?
Angels and demons protect. Where is your lunatic? You must take me to him presently.
Ain't you heard, Doctor, sir?
No.
A little too much haze. Robin Finesilver was the actor playing that porter, not Ray Winstone with a wig. But he was great. Robin was great to work with.
This is no mere plague.
This is based on kind of some imagery from Murnau's Faust of the devil spreading his wings and the plague over the city, but also 1931 Svengali by Archie Mayo, with Barrymore's Svengali torturing Marion Marsh. This, of course, is a VFX shot and would have been a special effects shot in any decade of cinema. I don't know that you can tell that that's the Harding house that his hand goes over as we cut, but it is, and there's that same little canal that I've talked about a million times.
I can't breathe.
Get up! Nepthodala, the common leech. Its sole impulse is to...
This shot is in a million Peter Cushing movies. I don't remember how many. I think it might be 12. And he even spoofs it because he's had the shot so much. And obviously, Peter Cushing played Van Helsing and blah, blah, blah. So for all the Hammer horror fans, this had to be in the extended version, as well as talking about Glazer's treatise, which is a real thing. And again, for the vampire nerds, we just have a little more folklore for you. And I really, really like Ralph's performance in this scene. But I think one of the main reasons why it is not in the movie is because we are shooting it from Aaron's perspective for the most part, who is sort of bored and not engaged in the scene. And we have the scene's central characters, not now, but they're sort of in the back of the frame. So you're just not as engaged with the scene. And because the stuff that Von Franz is talking about is a little bit opaque, it just felt like for the general release, the scene wasn't doing us any favors. But I do also like that it ends with certain death or whatever Ralph says and then cuts to the kids, which is nice.
I promise I shan't let anything harm you. No monsters, nothing. Now, give me a kiss and say your prayers.
Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord.
Gotta love their nightcaps. And this is a very tropey jump scare scene. The woman with the lamp. Very, The Innocents is a movie that I watch probably twice a year. And this scene is, there's many things about the movie I think that hopefully atmospherically at times feel like The Innocents, or at least I've tried, but this is the only thing that is closer to some kind of nod to that film in a specific way. And it was tricky to get the sound design just right. There's no music in this scene. Is it Orlok? Is it just creaks in the house? You know, blah, blah, blah. Trying to get the creaks to echo his footstep.
Anna. Forgive me. Has Friedrich returned?
No. What is it, my lovely?
May I stay with you tonight?
You can see that Emma gulps there, which was actually quite loud, but it was slightly comical, so we took the sound out. This is a very nice scene, but I liked how we photographed it, and it's intimate and it's sort of Bergman-y, but again, we're missing the kind of context that we are in Anna and Friedrich's room, which we find out later. I don't know how much it matters, or does it matter?
I cannot yield to being haunted by a ghost.
Oh, no, please, no. It is no mere ghost, for it can manifest physically, and with the most foul intent.
And what praise that?
Like every plague, its sole desire is to consume all life on earth. This creature is a force more powerful than evil. It is death itself.
I have not slept in days.
Obviously, I love working with Willem, and I'm incredibly lucky that he likes to work with me. But it was just so easy to write dialogue for this character. And we had to, even before we went to camera, we had to cut a tremendous amount because it was just too much fun for me. Anyway, but this speech I particularly liked writing, especially knowing that it could be said by Willem.
As we have been blinded by the gaseous light of science, I have wrestled with the devil as Jacob wrestled the angel in Peniel. And I tell you, if we are to tame darkness, we must first face that it exists.
I mean, they're a little too close together. One of my drama teachers would always say, you never get that close unless you're going to kiss someone or kill them. But I think we get away with it because Willem's character is a bit of a whack job. Lily Rose doesn't actually do that much sleepwalking in the movie for someone who's referred to as a somnambulist. But I think in earlier cuts, when there was a bit more, it got a little tiresome, though she does it quite well. I love the reflections of the skyline of Visburg in the window. Very nice detail.
Yeah.
Bill's performance, I like his hand on his sash and his hand on his cloak, trying to look dashing for his lady. And this is the first time that Bill gives a little bit more emotional depth to the character, a little bit more vulnerability. You know, I think Kinski's sad vampire worked really well then, and the Coppola version has this great romance that was based on the Jack Palance version that Dan Stevens did from the 70s. But as the vampires evolved to be like a total hero and an Edward Cullen having like a super demonic evil bastard as the villain was something that was really important to me. This is the demon lover relationship. Heathcliff in the novel is not the sympathetic character that Olivier portrayed. He loves Kathy, but he's obsessed with her and wants to destroy her as much as he wants to be with her. And this is the character we were after. But Bill was, you know, often saying, you know, I know I'm like this undead wizard who has all these powers, but like where would I feel self-conscious? How could I feel self-conscious? Like, what could make me vulnerable? And I think it was finally up to Bill to answer those questions, but he sprinkles it in a tiny bit here and there in ways that I think makes his death weirdly moving. Weirdly, most people tend to feel bad for him when he's dying, even though he's an absolute evil bastard. And his relationship with Ellen is completely twisted and horrible and abusive, but yet Bill's able to add these dynamics into this character. I also like how strong Lily plays this scene. It would be a good scene for drama school to play with who has the upper hand.
Your passion is bound to me.
You cannot love.
I cannot. Yet I cannot be sated without you. Remember how once we were. A moment. Remember.
I abhor you.
I thought about having maggots in his mustache for that moment, but it seemed a bridge too far.
You 3 nights. Tonight.
His whole costume and his hairstyle and mustache is all based on what Transylvanian noblemen of his period would actually have worn. You'd be hard pressed to find a Transylvanian nobleman or a Transylvanian villager without a mustache, maybe a beard, but certainly a mustache. And that forelock that we would kind of maybe connect with Ukrainian Cossacks was actually popular among Romanian noblemen and Polish noblemen in his period. And I just thought it was kind of weird, kind of interesting, but you also wouldn't know, was it shaved like that? Is just the back of his head rotten and fallen off? It added a lot of possibilities. So these are real rats on Emma Corrin, and I didn't know that rats are incontinent, and so they were constantly urinating and defecating all over Emma during this scene, and they took it very well, but it was horrifyingly smelly. Horrifyingly smelly. Here we are back in Valadovna Hospital, another scene that Marie-Gabrielle Roti helped with the staging.
I've entreated the burgomaster for a quarantine. The city must be shut down.
The thing that she did that was really great was adding this kind of hysterical woman just running like crazy. It was the extra little ingredient that we needed to make the scene as frantic as it needed to be.
A shadow pressing my body, thinking.
So it's nice that Emma gets this scene since their characters so buttoned up and proper all the time to give some contrast and to see how this family falls apart.
I fear little Friedrich.
Again, this kind of monologue with the random beat changes and all this is very difficult to pull off. And they do it quite well.
May I see the girl? I must assure them.
Everything will be well, my darling. Everything shall be just fine.
I don't know myself. What is this insufferable darkness?
How much Bed Creek is sad and creepy and how much Bed Creek is comical. I hope we hit it right. I think we did.
You must hear me. There is something. The shadow. An infernal creature. Please.
I do enjoy the maids running down the stairs at the beginning of that scene for whatever reason.
Frau, forgive me, but I need you and Thomas. both of you, to return home. It's for your own sake.
Please.
It's great to see Ellen's character come into her own here, and I do like these sort of late Act 2, early Act 3 scenes where the subtext becomes the text. I employ these kinds of arguments a lot, but I enjoy it when I see them in films, and I also enjoy writing them.
Why do you hate me?
I also love that brown and white striped dress.
How dare you speak to me in that marked manner?
Both of their performances are real knockouts in this scene.
Your place, madam.
I will not stand by and pretend at your superiority.
I refuse.
You can see the plants are dead as everything in their household has gone haywire. I presume their servants still could water the plants, but I think it was a nice touch by Craig and his team.
Find the dignity to display the respect of your good.
How can you be so stupid and cruel?
Hartman will call you a coach. At my expense.
That hairstyle was chosen by Aaron from a lot of images that I sent him, and it was kind of the most out there hairstyle from the period he could have chosen, but he's able to make it work really well.
Going to die!
Why did you not tell me of this before?
I am a fool. Of course it is economic.
We actually, behind them, had one of the most intricate versions of the heptagram on the wall, and we realized, of course, that he wouldn't come to the conclusion about Solomonari from seeing the heptagram on the book in this shot if it was in Knock's cell, and so we very quickly needed like replaster the wall and remark it with different occult imagery before we shot it, because I just realized it moments before we were going to shoot the scene. It's crazy. Almost 10 years of working on this thing, and it didn't occur to me.
Pull up the rug.
That little altar seems creepier in person to me than it did in the film. I hope you can see the dogs eating the dead horse. It's a nice detail. So this raving maniac is played by Christian, the guy who's the hospital porter, because only he could do this to that level.
Our Nosferatu is of an...
It was cool. He's throwing cabbages around like leaves from a Bible or something.
Own learned disciple.
What say you?
A further elucidation leads only to...
This extended version just gives us, again, a little bit more context of the Orlok mythology.
I sent them home. How can this perversion be killed?
I do not know. You sent them home.
Just when Harding's
Yes, I did.
ready to believe...
Precisely correct. I do not know.
Von Franz doesn't know how to kill a vampire.
Firsthand.
And it all comes crashing down again.
All your fine lectures are mere regurgitations from bloody books!
The means of repelling and destroying vary greatly from region to region. Their efficacy is plainly unknown. Yet there is one invariable...
Of course, even up to the shooting day, he had a long list of the different ways to kill a vampire from different regions. But, again, gotta cut that dialogue down.
It must sleep in its grave by day.
Boiling wine, a spike of iron through the navel, decapitation, incineration.
My God.
The staking, of course, was originally to keep the bodies bound to the earth rather than the stake actually killing them. It would keep them in their grave.
See, there's a bloody real plague, gentlemen. A real epidemic that is really killing real people.
The
What
facts
are
are
the rules
that
of the
have
Christ in
the
heaven!
war.
This isn't a satanic magician or any other humiliating fantasy. It's no wonder you're a laughing stock.
Oh, you asshole!
Those lines that were cut in the theatrical version are also quite nice of Aaron's and very, very well performed.
It's bitten by vermin. Rats! No more.
Tomorrow.
And as photographed, this scene kind of goes on with von Franz kind of continuing to have the last word, and it was beginning to be a little Mel Brooks, so we mellowed it out a bit. But I think it sets a fairly good tone by the end. But right there, yeah, Willem gave him a little more piece of his mind originally. Again, an uncharacteristically pretty shot for one of my movies, but I like it a lot. This scene, we really should have had Ellen's close-up here. I don't know what the hell we were thinking, but we didn't shoot it, and I think it was a real mistake. I think the intention was to keep this in Nick's perspective, but the scene frankly goes back and forth between them. It mainly is Nick's perspective, but it does go back and forth a bit. I think we make the handoffs in a way that you get away with, even though conventionally I think it's a bad decision. But not having Lily's close-up at the beginning of the scene was a real mistake.
You can say will shake me, for there is a devil in this world, and I have met him, and he... I cannot speak it.
I find this is Nick's best performance. Nick is the nicest guy. Like, he's such a genuinely kind guy. So he's able to play this character who's not able to see the darkness in the world until it's too late and has a hard time coping with it. He just does it so well, and it's because he's such a kind person. But he, again, like all the actors, he just really threw himself into the role. And, you know, I mean, the stuff that Lily does in this scene is movie stealing. It's just so tremendous and raw. I've never worked with an actor who's so emotionally available in the scene to just go there. It's quite tremendous.
Tenderness, and I called out.
What do you mean by that?
At first it was sweet. I had never known such bliss.
Helen.
Yet it turned to torture. It would kill me. But Thomas, it was you that gave me the courage to be free of my shame.
This scene we shot way earlier than I wanted to, and it also took a big toll on Lily. She lost her voice by the end of shooting the scene and was always sort of like on the way, trying to recover from that through the rest of the shoot to some degree. It's like a very emotionally exhausting performance.
No, don't touch me! I am not to be touched! You stopped your letters to me.
What?
You promised to write to me every day. Did not you think of me in that castle?
I did.
Lies.
To what you have just confessed.
He told me about you. He told me how foolish you were. How fearful. How like a child. How you fell into his arms as a swooning lily of a woman.
Ellen.
He told me how you sold me to him for gold.
No.
That was supposed to be
Ellen,
sacred.
please.
You never listen. Well, where is it? Your money, your promotion, your health. Where is that which is so precious to you? Have you paid back kind, pardoning your debt?
We didn't do a ton of takes of this because it is just so exhausting to do all this physical stuff that she's doing with the shaking and everything, and the screaming, the muscle control and everything.
We should never have married. We're already dead. Ah!
This primal scream is her. I wanted the sound of her dress and her shoes to be like a little too loud, something like unsettling about that, but also that dress was loud. Lily wondered if we CG enhanced that spit, but it was just the sound. Yet again, this is work that she's doing with Marie Gabrielle Rodi based on some Butoh techniques and the very, very careful manipulation of her best vocal takes.
Please, please. I'll be good. I promise. I promise.
Emotional whiplash, which I also enjoy writing.
You could never please me as he could.
This was a shot that when we were rehearsing, I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we went all the way over the sofa and onto Lily's face upside down? And then I said, it's just going to be too hard. But Jaron loved the idea so much that he became quite insistent that we do it. And it involved making the wall so that it would open up during their copulation here so that we could arc over and get that shot. It was quite challenging.
Ellen! Ellen, it's me! Ellen! I love you! I love you! You're safe with me. It's me. It's me.
Yeah, obviously she's falling apart in him, but maybe this would have been nice for a little reverse shot at the end of this. But again, it was part of this design to stay with Nick. But as she's our main protagonist, perhaps that was not the best decision. Again, it's not bad, but I think it would have been better, and we would have been even more with Ellen.
At last.
This book, Aneta Železnikova was the graphic designer, and she did a ton of work on this book. We passed the concept back and forth many, many, many times to get the calligraphy right and the previous owner's crazy writings in the margins, and of course the medieval illustration.
And freed them from the plague of Nosferatu.
You can see his ring better in this shot. You could have made a short film about the book. It was such a nice piece. And this, the one thing that's not in the theatrical version that probably should be, is this. I think that there's a lot of feedback from the test screenings that there's too much Orlok shadow, and I think I maybe took that note to heart too much to get rid of that shot, but it doesn't tie the three nights together again, and particularly not having Lily's close up in that previous scene that I was harping on about. I think that connective tissue really helps. This screaming is by Ella and Meredith, our UK voices, but also Adela Hesova, who actually played Clara. She was an incredible screamer, and we brought her into the ADR stage to do some screaming as well. And I think it's pretty effective, as is Emma's performance there. These coffins, I don't know why, were not made of balsa wood, and they were insanely heavy. You can see all the struggling that these background characters are doing with the weight of the coffins is real, and they're actually trying to make it not look so heavy because it was so insanely heavy. I will definitively say I am pleased with how the cemetery looks, and I love Lily's costume here.
I can weep no longer.
In order to find a place in the cemetery where we could build that mausoleum, there was not a lot of gravestones there, so we actually had to bring in tombs and headstones of our own to populate it more. Jesus was there, and the tombstones in the deep background.
I know.
The Grim Reaper wields his...
It was really challenging on a film this size to make sure that we have every single exterior be overcast, and we achieved it. having the backlot set was very helpful because we could silk it and tent it at times to get the feeling. But with the cemetery, we kind of lucked out because it had been very sunny in the cemetery before. It was in spring and it started to leaf. So some of the trees, we had to pluck leaves out. And at some point we had to use some CG to get rid of some more leaves at the top of the frame. But again, this is when CG can lift your practical work to where it needs to go.
I fear I'm not free of his spell.
Trust in God and your strength. The monster left you to the wolves, yet you prevailed. Pardon.
Forgive me, not myself. Please forgive me, all of you. My reason cannot accept.
Again, with Aaron's performance here, like to see the fall of this character, he does it so well.
Tonight, we destroy the beast.
Let me come with you.
No, of course not, Ellen. You must be kept safe away.
We shall meet at Harding's and depart.
We had to build this carriage interior for this scene because the carriage that this was based on was just a little too skinny to fit all three of Nick, Lily, and Aaron on that side, as slim as they are. And then to get this sort of slow creeping dolly.
It must.
Professor, allow me to walk you to your door. I know. It must be me, Professor.
I am but an able tourist in this occult world. You were born to it. It is a rare gift.
His pull to me is so powerful, so terrible. Yet my spirit cannot be evil as his.
We must know evil to be able to destroy it. We must discover it within ourselves, and when we have, we must prove.
This goes without saying, but it's just massive for Ellen to sort of be heard and to have someone actually understand her the way Von Franz does.
I fear Nosferatu is impervious to any of our iron stakes.
And Lily and Willem, unsurprisingly, have like really nice chemistry, and so I think it makes this scene work quite well.
In heathen times, you might have been a great priestess of Isis. Yet, in this strange and modern world, your purpose is...
Of course, in Stoker's Dracula, we are in the late 1890s, whereas we're in the 1830s here, and so the modern world is less modern in Nosferatu, which is one of the things that I think is kind of interesting. And so for him to call this world modern that doesn't seem modern from a modern lens is maybe funny, but doesn't take you out of the scene, I hope.
You will put an end to all of this. Promise you shan't return to me till he is no more.
The coffins that were in that last shot, they have like a mechanical release on the ironwork so that the bottom drops out to put bodies in a mass grave, and then you can recycle the coffins and put more bodies in them. A nice little detail that no one will ever know. They've tried to put that shelf back, even though all the stuff broke.
He's not here.
No, Mr. Harding has departed, sir.
Another scene with too much haze.
He has a heavy grief. We shall wait for him. There's time yet till sundown.
No, we must find him. He is unwell, Seevers. I fear for him.
This is the same street that Doc runs down pantsless into the night with the rain, but we shoot it from a higher angle and it hopefully doesn't feel too much of a repeat, even though you see that colonnade. But I mean, it doesn't matter if it is the same street, but hopefully it just doesn't feel repetitive. Yeah, it's a very moving scene by Aaron. I did realize when I was checking the 35mm print of this movie that Louise in German should really be pronounced Louisa. So we were way past the point of being able to fix that when I realized that, but it should be Louisa. Another oops. Speaking of oops, this blood that he coughs, he's coughing it like literally into a shadow. So we had to grade it sort of unnaturally bright in order for it to be seen, which was kind of annoying because it's not very naturalistic. But it's cool. I he does this well, and I think the sound design did a really good job with choosing the best cough and editing it. Because I was kind of worried that the audience could laugh because it's like so much for him to cough up blood when he's on the coffin, but it seems to work.
Now in bliss, away from everlasting sleep.
You see the makeup on Emma trying to cover Anna's plague marks.
Friedrich!
We are too late. We must set fire to their infected bodies. Our flames will sanctify them.
I cannot bear any more. Please, we must onward.
But Orlok, will he not already have risen? Should we not return to our home?
No, I will not wait till morning.
Very wise, young Thomas.
Feel his hold upon me this night.
May God have mercy on their souls.
I don't remember what Ralph's line was, but when we were actually there seeing their bodies on top of each other in that way, may God have mercy on their souls, seemed to be more appropriate than whatever I had written.
Unto the day of doom, and not to be remembered before the face of God, which shall come to judge the quick and the dead, and the world with fire.
Must be said, those coffins, while they were too heavy, look great and are very unique. Those super tall coffins were a popular German thing for wealthy people in the period, and I haven't really seen them before. This was a hole in the set with a mirror on the other side. A little practical solution there. This is a real castle in the Czech Republic, this courtyard.
I am ready. I bid you come to me.
This was another set that really looked
There he lies.
darn real. And then yet again, we've like all these rats are real, but the deep background rats were CG, and we had basically like plexiglass that was keeping the rats in place. That was something that we had to employ on some other scenes. That is sometimes hidden, and sometimes you have to erase the edges of the plexiglass. Nick's acting of accidentally having a rat on him was quite nice there. I don't know, the coffins probably should have been pried off or screwed off instead of having them all being able to be pushed off, but it was just with the way that we cover things in one shot, it just would have been too time consuming, but it is sort of phony. This scene also, I think it ends up playing really nice. Performances are good, and Robin's score does a lot of the heavy lifting, but I think there could have been a little more of Nick earlier on, and maybe a little more close-up of Knock earlier on to really drive home the points.
Set fire to it all.
Damn it, man, he has gone to my wife.
We must burn it. We must destroy all his habitation. No sanctuary.
No, there is no time to be lost. He pursues Ellen.
It must be her. He cannot resist her blood. You are a madman.
You knew Olaf would not be here. You knew it this afternoon.
Your wife wills.
This is not...
He's beyond our mortals. In vain! In vain! You cannot outrun her destiny!
This is Willem Dafoe doing Willem Dafoe in a way that no one else can.
Us all! For when the thoughts pure like shall break upon the dawn, redemption! The plague shall be lifted! Redemption!
There's a little angel in that chapel. When I did this as a play in high school, which you can read about online because I haven't talked about it, my wife was in it and she played like an angel in the tomb. And also my brothers were gargoyles. My younger twin brothers were gargoyles on the fireplace. So the statue on the fireplace was also an ode to my brothers as well as the Jean Cocteau movie. And this is the beginning of the final music cue that is really quite a showstopper. And the performances are really tremendous. The lighting is stunning, but Robin's music really brings us home, so to speak.
Du gibt die Oester ab tua volia.
I do.
Doim gekoima.
I wish we were able to see a little more of the wedding dress, but this room was so small, it was hard to get the camera exactly where we wanted it to show a little more, because it was quite a beautiful thing. And also those are lilacs, of course, in the wedding headpiece on the veil. So one of the constant issues with all the atmosphere, aside from it occasionally being too heavy and obscuring stuff I would like to see, is that I was constantly asking the actors to not blink. Lily particularly wasn't allowed to blink often, and Bill was never allowed to blink. And this stuff dried your eyes out and made you want to blink. And I think this was the best acting take for that moment of them together, which is the most important bit of the scene, is their connection and that kiss that we've been waiting for the whole film long. But here you see Bill struggling not to blink because of the atmosphere. And he was like very saying like, oh, I sucked. I was almost blinking, but it actually makes him seem more vulnerable. So we kept it. And yeah, trying to get the sound design of the sensual caressing of his rotten back holes to be disturbing but not comical was a challenge. This was a drone shot over the set that we had built of Visberg, and then we tilt up and we see you saw nothing of this. It was like, whatever you saw at Barrendov. And, obviously this is all the VFX team's work of the scanned buildings in these northern German cities. Now, the sun you see gets brighter and brighter here, but if you'll notice, the folklore says, and they say in the film, that it's the cock crow that is what gets him, not the sun. It's the act of not going into his coffin before sunlight, before day, before, the purity of day has come, rather than like sunlight. Vampires are allergic to sunlight, or it burns them up into a crisp or whatever. It's day and not sun, if that makes any sense, was my thinking. And so here he's purged of her blood. This is also interesting too, because I wrote it with them having this death as very much a duet, which was similar to how I did it as a play when I was a kid. But I thought that was wrong. But we rehearsed it again with input of Marie Gabrielle Rodi, trying to find what would work, and eventually this duet was what we came to, which was much closer to what I did back then. We did many, many, many takes of that, and Bill he was just so exhausted. The amount of effort that goes into that. Nick's very lovely here, and but doesn't overdo it. It's quite, I think it's moving. You can see there's blood still like seeping out of Orlox's body. You should be paying attention to Nick, but if you decide to watch it more than once, watching the commentary, take a peek every now and then, you can probably see some blood weeping.
Give us. And lo, the maiden.
And it wasn't in the script originally for von Franz to repeat this quotation from the book, but I think it does sort of tie up this fairy tale quite nicely. That's something that I like about Nosferatu versus Dracula, is that it is a bit of a simpler fairy tale, and with that, it kind of, it really helps. And we also get closure on the cat. This shot maybe lasts a little too long, but we had already composed the music, and so there you go. And here's a little death in the maiden shot, and his corpse is based on very much on Utsi, the Iceman. Well, that's Nosferatu. Hope you had a nice time. Hope you learned something from the commentary. I know my commentary tends to be kind of dry and not very much about dramaturgy, but I learned a lot about filmmaking from commentaries and special features on Blu-rays, and I didn't go to film school, and so I'm trying to share the same kind of stuff that I would have wanted to have known when I was figuring out how to make movies. So hopefully it's helpful. Also, man, David White that did the prosthetic work on Orlok, it's really tremendous. And one of the things that I loved that he did was having the ears being rotten away, because I wanted him to be just a dead human and not a creature. And I thought that detail that David came up with was pretty awesome. Okay, thank you.